We've got a little bit of a new format going forward today. My name is Jordan Frank. I'm going to be the host to try and keep these two guys in check and in line here. We've got Ben Raza, as you know, and Jason Roslin. What's going on, fellas?
What's up, Jordan?
Nothing much. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, boys. We got a big slate ahead of us. We got some great NFL games. We're going to dig into golf, some college hoops. Before we get to that, I want to do, because, we're experimenting and kind of changing things up here, I wanted to do just kind of a real quick intro of myself and kind of let you guys talk about yourselves for a second. I know we've had a lot of new users come on, and this show is relatively new. So I want to just turn it over to you guys real quick. Give us like the 10-second spiel. Where are you from? What's your favorite team? Biggest sweat or kind of worst loss in your gambling career? Something that the folks out there might find interesting. Ben, you want to go first?
Sure. So from New York, live right above New York City. It's funny. I've been gambling for a long time. I lose interest in my teams. I root for the Knicks, I root for the Jets, but I certainly don't live and die with them as I once did. So it's not the same. I'm trying to think of probably the worst beat I ever had on the gambling side was I believe it was St. Bonaventure a couple years ago, and late in the game, they had it wrapped up and their fans stormed the court and they got a technical foul. And VCU made a couple free throws to send it to overtime. That one sticks with me. Every time I've had a bad beat, I think about that game specifically, and then I realize it's not so bad. That was a tough one.
How about you, Jason? Well, as a Knicks and Jets fan, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, it doesn't get any worse than that.
Yeah, and funny, I'm actually from Rhode Island originally, and Ben and I went to competing schools. I went to the University of Rhode Island. He went to the University of Massachusetts, and probably at the same time, which is funny enough. But I moved my way down to sunny Florida because I like golf way, way too much to live in Rhode Island, and I did it for 30 years and decided to leave. I would say the best gambling story I have, it is DFS, but it's so good. And I don't know if you guys know it or not, but it happened this year. Brandon Cooks dropped 2 balls in the Saints-Rams game, and had he caught one of them, I would have won the Millionaire Maker. I lost by 1.2 points. I came in 4th. It was a single bullet entry too, so it was I got it on DK Crowns as well. So don't say DK Crowns can't go somewhere. No, I was all in on golf that week, so I had $20 in crowns or whatever, fired it in, and here we are. But yeah, that's probably the worst beat and something cool that happened, I guess, at the same time.
Damn, yeah, that's pretty tough. I mean, we don't feel too bad.
No, not too bad, at least. How about you, Jordan? I know that I was watching you play in the sports betting contest, which definitely want to get your thoughts on that. But what's your worst or best betting story?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to talk about the sports betting championship this past weekend because I know it's kind of swirling, gotten a lot of attention in the gambling world. But before we get to that, I'm a Chicago guy, born and raised. I actually moved out to California because I wanted to golf and play tennis and live in sunlight. So I kind of followed the same path as you, Jason. I don't know. I have a few that are pretty rough. I think my worst one is probably I was in actually a Survivor League.
Oh, no.
And if you don't know what that is, I mean, that's just really basically where you pick one team to win in the NFL straight up, not against the spread, and then you can't use that same team again the following week. So there's these large contests, and I was in one that had over 10,000 people in it with a 7-figure payday to first place. And I made it all the way to week 15. And in this one, you had to pick 3 teams after week 15. And I had 2 of the teams already won. And I already had 3 teams circled in week 16 that all won. And I ended up losing on a last-second field goal, Vikings against the Rams. This is probably 6-7 years ago. And if the Rams would have won, I would have won the contest the following week.
Oh, dude, that's brutal. I would hate both of those teams forever. I hate Brandon Cooks forever. Right?
Yeah, I do. As Adrian Peterson went off that game, they were out of it. And I still just can't get over that. It's such a sore spot.
Oh, man. Well, tell us about the sports betting championship. I was following you along. You were in top 10 heading into Sunday. And then shit just hit the fan. Excuse my French, but tell us about what's going on the floor.
It was pretty wild. I think just kind of big picture, it's a really fascinating tournament structure, and I think it has a future. I think DraftKings did a really great job, despite the negative headlines. I think the tournament itself was a great concept and was run really well. I think they just kind of got in a no-win situation where literally the Patriots-Chargers game could have ended 2 minutes later, and it would have gone right into the second game, and there would never have been an issue because nobody's bets would have been graded.
Mm-hmm.
And if that first game had ended 5 minutes earlier, everybody's bets would have been graded. So there was such a small window of time that it really was unfortunate. I think my strategy going in, was to try and double up as quickly as I could, or at least grind, pretty big, from my 5K that you get allotted to start with. And, I probably would have done a few things differently. I got up to, like you said, I think 10th place. I had a first half bet in the Patriots game that won really quickly because I bet the over in the first half, which we'll get into, very quickly on how that game got out of hand really quickly.
Yep.
And so I had all that money in my account, and I was debating, whether to fire on a second half bet or just roll it into the second game. The Saints-Eagles game. And what I decided to go with a big second half bet that I lost on that last second Chargers touchdown, or not last second, in the last minute.
It was late. Yeah.
So that could have been my story too, because I realistically had a chance to win the tournament. Yeah. I would have had to have fired on a parlay to get there, but I think
you would have had like 25,000 heading into that last game had that bet hit, correct? Somewhere maybe a little north of that.
Yeah, exactly. I had 25 at some point, and then I probably would have been a little bit higher, and then I would have had to have gone there was a 5-1 parlay on the Eagles, and I was debating between the Eagles and the over and the Eagles and the under, and
so either way, it looked like it probably wasn't going to turn out great.
Yeah, Eagles and the under ended up coming in, miraculously.
Oh, that right at the end. That's right. Yep.
Right at the end with the missed field goal. So all in all, pretty fascinating weekend. I had a great time. The event itself was really cool. Huge overlay. I don't think that's going to happen again. But the controversy that everybody's talking about, it's really just unfortunate, and I'm not sure how it's going to get resolved. But it really is unfortunate that the whole weekend was kind of marred by this. Just
do you think that going forward, maybe they should just open up second half bets, just open up that second game, maybe even open up golf if there's a golf contest? Like, do you think it really should be cut off? What's the big deal about it?
I think that would probably be a little easier. I think they wanted to have everybody's bets in to allow, I guess, people to sweat it a little more and not have like last minute, like firing, like parlays and things like that might alter the whole thing. But, that could happen either way. If somebody has a really long shot bet that you don't realize. The really interesting thing about this tournament was that you could see everybody's bets, and often you could see them before the game started.
Yep.
So there was this insane game theory going on as to, like, you could see the people in front of you and behind you and see what they were betting, how much they were risking, and you could act accordingly. You could
take the other side. Yep.
You could fade their picks. You could follow. Really, there was all sorts of kind of directions you could swerve, and that's where I think it's really fascinating. And that's what I like about it is you are betting obviously against the house, but there was this kind of peer-to-peer element to it that I thought was really cool.
Absolutely. Definitely excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah, I am too. And yeah, like I said, hopefully the controversy doesn't kind of mar the uniqueness and kind of the coolness of that tournament. Excitement of it for sure.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts about that, man. I'm definitely excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, for sure. What did you guys think, kind of from afar? Were you following what was going on? Did you hear about the controversy?
I was following along because I almost went. Jordan, we were talking. I wanted to come down. Unfortunately, I was busy. And then, the ending overshadowed everything, and it's unfortunate. Obviously, when you have a lot of money at stake, DraftKings needs to make sure that they'll short up. It's the first one, but that's not something that you ever want to be a part of where there could be an unfair advantage. It is interesting. You just mentioned the peer-to-peer aspect. That's what struck me. You're betting against the house, but at the same time, similar to DFS, you're trying to beat everyone else. It doesn't really matter what you finish at. It matters that you finish higher than everyone else. So just knowing when to really pump it up and then when to kind of, maybe step back and play game theory. That's really the interesting part for me. Looking forward, hopefully, to getting in a couple, in the future.
Yeah, for sure. It was really interesting being there and kind of feeling that on the floor. You really got the sense that people were, a lot of people were going for it, but then you had, if you saw the cash line at the end, like basically 5, 6, 7,000 would have.
I was just about to say, wasn't it like 6,800 was the cash line?
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. I just don't think. I think there was a whole tier of people who were just going for it.
Yep.
And then there's a whole tier just kind of grinding it. Like there's people who were betting, 100+ bets over the weekend and just grinding, small amounts.
Yep.
Grinding small edges, which long term is great. In a tournament like this, I don't think you could ever win it.
No.
But you could probably, you could grind some profit, and if that's your intent, then that might be doable. I don't think you could ever win it with that strategy.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't seem so.
Yeah. So all in all, good weekend, which is a good segue into the NFL, which is certainly my favorite sport to bet, and I think the casual public's favorite as well. I want to do just kind of a brief recap of last weekend's games. We kind of went through just a little bit there. It was interesting coming into last weekend. It was all wild card. It was all underdogs. I'm sorry. Wild card weekend. All 4 underdogs covered. 3 of them won outright. In the past 2 years before that, the underdogs were 14-2 against the spread ever since the Patriots won the Super Bowl. So we had this crazy run of dogs winning and or covering at this crazy rate. And then going into last weekend, of course, 3 out of the 4 favorites covered and all 4 won. So just starting with the Colts and the Chiefs, that game, that was one that I was on the Chiefs in the contest. I love the Chiefs all week. I want to kick it over to you guys just to see kind of your thoughts. But I thought Andrew Luck just looked completely lost in that game from the get-go. Kansas City controlled the pace, the time of possession. An interesting stat for all 4 games of this last weekend was that the favorite who won the game had this crazy amount of time of possession, which kind of just shows you the strength of these 4 teams going forward. So in this game, for example, the Chiefs' time of possession was 39 minutes and 40 seconds, which is pretty unfathomable considering how fast the Chiefs play. What were your guys, I guess, thoughts going into that game, and what did you think, watching it and seeing how it unfolded?
Yeah, I can tell you that I thought the Colts would at least keep the game close with their defense rolling in as hot as they were, and Andrew Luck rolling in as hot as he was too. I'm almost positive that in the first half, in both the Chiefs Colts game and the Patriots Chargers game, the home team had more first downs than total plays on the other side at one point. It was absolutely ridiculous how much time of possession. Definitely in the Patriots game. And in the Chiefs game, I don't know that the Colts got over midfield until the 2-minute drive at the end of the half. It was absolutely pathetic watching those offenses play because, they were coming in pretty good and they have good players. So, yeah, underwhelming. I was excited to just get through the weekend because I didn't really think any game was really worth sitting down and watching a lot. Even the Rams-Cowboys game, the Rams pretty much controlled it the whole game. The Cowboys tried to keep it close, but more excited for this weekend. I thought they would have been better, and the teams – I feel like the Patriots were trolling us all year, to be completely honest with you.
That's what they do. So
Yep.
sick. Yeah, it was interesting. Obviously – coming off the, Jordan, you were just referencing this wildcard weekend. We see some upsets. It's a tough task to a team that's resting, that's game planning for you. Coming in, you're obviously going into their building, and these teams, these 4, they're clearly the best 4 teams. I don't think anyone's disputing that at this point. It was tough. I thought, the Colts, obviously they got off that horrible start when they blocked the punt for the touchdown. That was their opening. Really didn't do anything with it, obviously, and the Chiefs are tough when Mahomes doesn't turn the ball over, and he didn't again. He didn't throw a touchdown. He ran one in, but that's really the key. They have so many other playmakers. For him, it's honestly just don't. Even though he's so dynamic, don't lose the game. They're still going to be able to rack up the points, and their defense at home, honestly, is a lot better than people think.
Yeah, that was kind of my angle going into that game was that, the Colts had a lot of momentum, but if you kind of break down their schedule a little bit, they were going against a lot of the weaker offenses in the league and a lot of the weaker quarterbacks. So my personal opinion was that it was a little bit inflated, but I was not expecting such a dud from Luck and the team. Like you said, Jason, I mean, that game got out of hand so quickly. I mean, you thought maybe the block punt might have opened the door, but they just slammed that door like so quickly. And you know, as somebody on the Chiefs, you always love those kind of no-brainer wins that you can relax after about 10 minutes. But when you're on the other side of that, that's just the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
But these games, I mean, just the spreads indicate. I don't think we're going to be seeing many dominating wins, and these seem destined to be, late game tight edges, both just a field goal spread. Unlike the four that we saw, where the better teams just kind of controlled it from start to finish.
Yeah, and as you guys referenced, I mean, these are the four best teams in football all year who are left. They're the top two seeds in both conferences. They're the top four offenses, in DVOA. It was kind of inevitable. There were some potential, roadblocks, but personally, I'm glad that we're here. I think we have the best two games that we could have expected. I know Eagles fans probably don't agree with me, but I'm really looking forward to this weekend. Just real quickly, let's Cowboys Rams. That game was very interesting. Again, the Rams just dominated time of possession. They had the ball for 36 minutes, 13 seconds, which these kind of numbers, it's really abnormal in an NFL game to have such a disparity. And this kind of shows, they really committed to pound the ball. And we saw CJ Anderson go off. We saw Gurley, not get a ton of carries. And, that's something we'll talk about as we preview the game this weekend, kind of what his conditioning is and whether there's an injury there. But the interesting thing is, you've heard in the last few days that, the Rams are saying that they knew kind of what the Cowboys were doing defensively at all times, like literally tipping their defensive alignments, and that kind of allowed them to just run wild. That was another one where, in the contest, I bet the Rams. I like them as favorites. I usually don't like to bet big favorites, but I felt the touchdown was enough, and Jason Garrett certainly helped us out at the end. What were your guys' thoughts on that game?
Yeah, going in, I thought Elliott would be able to run a little bit better. Coming in, the Rams' run defense wasn't fantastic. And we talked about on the show, Ben and I, how good Aaron Donald was on the pass, but not great filling up those holes. But obviously, they did a good enough job controlling the game. I thought Cooper Kupp would have, is a big miss, and he definitely is. But Jared Goff was really able to put the team on his back, and CJ Anderson came up with a good performance. Todd Gurley a decent performance. So I think the Rams are kind of just showing their depth. We'll see how much Cooper Kupp's injury affects them this week. Obviously they've gone into the Superdome and given him a game already. So, for me, I was definitely disappointed in Dallas, but it showed that Dallas just isn't quite ready to match up to these good teams with their pace of play. Dak cannot keep up, obviously, scoring 30 and 40 points against good teams, and they're going to need to change that if they want to take the next step.
It was, I mean, I was on Dallas in this game, nothing heavy, but I was just stunned at the lack of consistency and even remotely stopping the run. I mean, it wasn't that they just had holes. They were running wild. And even at the end of the game, I totally get it with Dallas. You don't want to kick the onside kick. You kick it long. It felt like there was no chance they were going to get the ball back. Just the way the Rams were running. Obviously, Goff ended up ending them with the quarterback run. But at the same time, it was just such an anomaly to see. Obviously, CJ Anderson never saw that coming. But even Gurley, I thought if they could get him in space, he would have success. But I did not think they would run straight through Dallas's D. I'd be stunned if we see that against New Orleans. We'll have to see what wrinkles McVay can do. Obviously, he loves to get Goff right to the line. They can, talk to him in his helmet, get that defense, get the right play calls. It's going to be a chess match. Sean Payton is no moron, obviously. So different aspects, but man, it was stunning to just see just the demolition up front of the Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I saw some stat, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something that C.J. Anderson had 5 or 6 runs of 9 yards or more before he was touched.
It was,
Like,
I mean, the Gurley touchdown,
yeah,
I've never seen where it was like, oh, he scored and he was still 30 yards away from the end zone because he was so wide open.
yeah.
Just truly, it does lends itself to think that they found something on film because they seem to have the perfect play call at all times.
Yeah, and the Cowboys' defensive strength has been their rush D, so it really makes you wonder, what was going on. I mean, it makes sense that they had some sort of, whether it's intel or just, better scouting than Dallas maybe, but they were just gashing them left and right.
Yeah, speaking of the scouting, one of the plays that I thought was really interesting, just moving quickly onto the Saints-Eagles game, was the Saints came out and said that they scouted Fletcher Cox, what he does on punts, and he's in a defensive stay. And I guess early on in the game, on that 4th down where they converted on their own 35, I think it was it was like a 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. If you watch the play, Taysom Hill took the snap and ran right at Fletcher Cox doing the defensive stay. So it can really show you what those scoutings can do. And that was a massive play in the game. I believe the Eagles were already up 14-0 at that time. So it was dangerous. And it obviously changed the complexion of the game. So scouting matters. Maybe running backs don't, but scouting definitely does.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So let's talk about that game just real quick. So that's another one. So the Saints, people think they have this high flying offense, and they are high scoring, but they want to run the ball.
Yep.
That is their strength. As much as you read about Breeze and Michael Thomas, in this game they had a time of possession of 37 minutes and 50 seconds. Again, sounds like a broken record, but all 4 of these teams absolutely dominated time of possession, which shows you how important that is. The ability to have a power game, which seems to kind of be counter to where the NFL is going. I mean, even if the Chiefs are able to do that, with their high-powered offense, you could just see the value of time of possession, keeping the other team off the field, keeping your defense fresh. I thought, the Eagles came out firing and really, the Saints seem to get off to slow starts, which is one of my concerns with the Saints. And that happened again against the Eagles, and they were in a 14-0 hole. But, obviously they crawled their way out of it. They had the field goal attempt at the end of the game for the cover, which missed, and were lucky to honestly hold on to the game with the Eagles driving.
Late,
what are you guys' thoughts? They rushed that play with 2 minutes and about 2 seconds left. Now, Foles hit Elshon, right in the hands, so I don't think I can really be critical of the play calling, but it was interesting that they rushed, to get that play off, right before the 2-minute warning as they were driving at the end of the game.
Yeah, go ahead,
Ben. It was obviously, the Eagles. I thought for the Eagles to stay in the game, they had to punch first. They did. Saints rebounded. They settled in. Jason, you just referenced this. I thought that was the biggest play of the entire game, was going for it. I wanted the Saints. I had them in some back end of some teasers, so I needed them to win that game. I was really glad. I wanted them to just straight go for it. Obviously, the fake punt, same concept. They needed to get points there. Kicking it away down 14-0, that was a danger zone. And then, they hung in. Eagles got their chance. You just said it. Alshon, you hit him right in the hands. That's just a fluke play. Bounces right to Lattimore. Game over. It would have been really telling. I mean, for my blood pressure and for my just bank statements, I'm glad that we didn't see the Eagles score there, but I would have loved to see Breeze have a chance to drive them down, maybe for a game-winning field goal. That would have been really interesting to see how the Saints responded if they went down by 1 late in that game.
Yeah, especially rushing that play before the 2-minute warning. I mean, theoretically, the Saints would have had enough time.
Plenty of time.
If the Eagles had scored, I mean, who knows what would have happened, but would have been interesting to see if Breeze could get it done. So let's just go through real briefly then. The last game of the weekend, which we've talked about a little bit already, was the Chargers and the Pats. Another one that got out of hand really quickly. Interesting that most of the bets were on the Chargers in that game. I think it was over 60%, at the time of the game went off. And the Patriots just dominated, on the ground, which is something that I don't think many people thought they could do or had the personality or the personnel to really, pound a team like that. And, between that and just kind of the short game with James White, they dominated, absolutely dominated. And, Jason, you mentioned earlier, have they been trolling us? I don't know. I mean, they're a different team at home, certainly, as we'll talk about going forward. But what were you guys' thoughts? I mean, they absolutely crushed the Chargers. A lot of people were flying high in the Chargers. People were saying they're their dark horse Super Bowl team, and the Pats just stomped them.
Yeah, here's kind of my thoughts on the Patriots. First, obviously, I talked about on the show that coming from Rhode Island, obviously they're the only team that I can call mine because Rhode Island is part of New England. But if you watch the Patriots, they are a different team in the playoffs in the sense that of their play calling. They take the 6-yard passes almost every single time it's there. James White, Ben and I said, I came on, I told Ben it was 4.5 and 67 yards for James White. I said, he's going to have that by the end of the first quarter. I was kind of joking, but I wasn't, because that's exactly what the Patriots do in the playoffs. They get the 6-yard plays, and then they wait for Edelman to break out or Gronk to break out for the 20-yarder. And it's almost unstoppable. Everybody knows they're going to do it. And Tom Brady finds a way to create the extra 1.5 for James White to get the 1.5 yard separation. And there it was. So now, can the Chiefs put a little bit more pressure? Honestly, I thought the Chargers have a better defense than the Chiefs. So I don't know that the Chiefs are going to do any better. The offensive line is incredible for the Patriots right now. I mean, Rex Burkhead even got in the end zone. You could have played all 3 running backs on a showdown DFS slate and been okay. So it's interesting that maybe the running back doesn't matter in the Patriot system right now, but Sony Michel looked really good as well. Yards after the first touch looked pretty good. So I'm excited for my team, obviously, and I'm okay with them trolling everybody because I've seen it. I've seen it for 20 years now.
Yeah, I hate the Patriots. I just can't stand them. The Chargers were just not ready to play. They got punched first, and they did not counter punch. Yeah, they threw the touchdown to Keenan Allen. I thought that would settle them. It did not. Yeah. They were just ill-equipped to stop. Obviously, Sony Michel was getting what he wanted. James White had 15 catches. That's just not – the game was out of hand early. We're obviously going to dig in depth when they go – I will say going to Arrowhead is a different animal. Patriots 9-0 at home this year, 3-5 on the road. So it is what it is. Is that going to make the complete difference? No, it's not like this team cannot win there. But at the same time, at least the Chiefs, their defense, they will have some advantages just by being in the confines of Arrowhead.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we transition then and talk about what everybody wants to talk about is, this coming weekend, conference championship weekend. As I said, we have the top 4 teams, top 2 seeds, top 4 offenses, DVOA. We have 2 high totals, some interesting matchups to say the least. So let's start with the first game, which is the Rams. Going back to New Orleans, these teams played earlier in the season. That was in week 9, and the Saints won 45-35 in clearly a shootout. Talib was not playing in that game. Marcus Peters got pretty lit up in that game and has had a war of words with Sean Payton ever since. Some interesting stats. As I said, it's a rematch. The team that won the first game of a rematch has gone on to win 50 of 84 times straight up. So 50 and 34 records straight up. If the team that won is favored in the rematch, they're 52 and 32 straight up. And if the team won as a favorite and is favored again, which is the case of the Saints, its stat is 40 and 20 straight up. Now, ATS, those numbers are not quite the same. And in fact, it's a losing record, ATS, when you have that exact scenario. So this game has basically been stuck at 3. It opened at 3.5, but got bet down pretty quickly to 3. The over-under has kind of settled around 56.5, 57. Not a lot of movement there as well. The last time they played, as I said, the Saints gave the Rams their first loss. It's in New Orleans again. Drew Brees is 6-0 straight up in the playoffs at home under Sean Payton. If the spread stays under 4, which in all like certainty it will, it'll be the lowest spread for Brees at home in the playoffs, which is interesting. I'll hand it off to Ben first. What are your general thoughts on the matchup, on the game? Spread over under.
Yeah. So you said it opened at 3.5. Got bet down to 3. I'd be stunned. I mean, I'd be stunned if it crossed 3 to get to 2.5. I'd be stunned if it got to 4. I don't think it's going to steam either way, to be honest. It's two really, really good teams. They've gone to the Dome. They were in that game. They didn't get it done. Cooper Kupp did play in that game. That is worth noting, but they didn't have to leave. Marcus Peters was torched, as you said. Michael Thomas, I think he had over 200 yards in that one. So it's going to be a game of adjustments. These are two smart coaches. It's, to me, that the key is Jared Goff. I'll get right to it. I think that the Rams are going to try to run the ball. I think they'll have some success. That offensive line is good enough that they can control, but at the same time, it's not going to be a repeat of what we saw last week. They can't just lean on Gurley and CJ Anderson. I can't believe I have to talk about that. They're not going to control the game fully with those two. They are going to have to get Goff. Not that he has to win the game, but he has to make more plays than he did against Dallas. I know, as I said before, McVay wants to get him to the line, communicate what he's seeing, get him in good positions. He's got to get Robert Woods or Cooks. I think, to have a very productive game for them to go in there and get a win.
Jason,
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Does Talib really make that much of a difference on Mike Thomas? I mean, obviously that's where we think Talib is going to go, right? And does that open Peters up to go play against the Ted Ginn? Maybe it does make enough of a difference, but I guess for me first, I like the over in this game, and I think I'm going to end up taking the under in the Patriots game, but we'll get to that. The over for me here, I don't see these teams. I know it's the playoffs, but they scored 80 combined points last time. Is Marcus Peters is Talib really going to make 21 points go the other way? So, or what's the line now? 58, Jordan, or 57.5, somewhere in that range?
I think last I saw was 56.5, but it just kind of depends where you're getting that number.
Yeah, I just don't see how the playoffs and Aqib Talib is going to keep this game 21 points less. Maybe I'm wrong, but listen, we have no weather problems. That's kind of the bet that I'm focusing on. I think these teams are pretty much toss-ups. If you're going to bet, if you're going to take the underdog in the Rams, I don't see why you wouldn't just go to the money line. Obviously, though, we saw like the Eagles. That's why you don't take the money line, because they did cover. I just don't, with it being 3 now, I either see it being a push on a last-second field goal by Lutz, or the Rams coming away with it, or the Saints coming away with it with more than 3 points. So those would be my 2 bets for the game. I would take the Rams money line, and I would take the over at this point. I guess I'd rather take the juice. I think it's a pick 'em, so I'd rather just take the plus on this one. As far as how the game goes, for me, it's going to rely on how much Alvin Kamara gets out in space. I do think Talib will mitigate Mike Thomas to the degree that he's not going to have 15 and 202, but he's still going to have 7 and 100 and a score probably, even against Talib. Mike Thomas is just that good, and they find ways to get him the ball. So I think Alvin Kamara is the X factor in this game.
It's interesting that right now 55% of the money is coming in on the Rams. I guess they're big believers in last week's performance against Dallas. I think for me, the key that I'm looking at is the Rams rushing game. I don't see any way that they can duplicate what they did last week. Number one, I'm assuming they're not going to know every defensive scheme or alignment that the Saints are going to throw at them. I'm counting on Sean Payton to do a little bit better job. Also, the Saints run D is the Cowboys run D was great, but I think the Saints run D is just a different level. And playing in the Dome, I'm counting on the Saints to really stop and do a much better job against the run.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if CJ Anderson or Gurley is going to get the bulk of the carries, but I think what I envision happening is that the Saints are going to try and dominate time of possession again. They may get up first, and if they do, like Ben was saying, it's on Goff to have a good game, and I just don't have the confidence in Goff at this point to go into the Dome and win, a conference championship game in that kind of environment. So,
are you nervous though, Jordan, about Mark Ingram's ineffectiveness recently? I mean, he just hasn't been that good.
Not a ton. I mean, I think what the Saints want to do is pound the ball, and I think they have enough options to do that. I mean, even with Kamara, or even, really as the Patriots do. I mean, those short screens and short pass routes.
Yeah.
is kind of the new age, running the football, and that keeps
It
the
is,
clock
yeah.
going. They're very high percentage plays and completions.
And we saw even Taysom Hill in the Eagles game. I mean, he had a Kamara wide open touchdown, another big run from that same package. So, yeah, I just thought that Mark Ingram has been so ineffective that maybe it shows in this game.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. I don't love him in this game. I definitely like Kamara a lot more. And the Saints will open it up, but what I think, at least what I'm envisioning and kind of my game script, is that the Saints are going to try and bludgeon the Rams, like they do most teams. Like they really do want to pound the ball and have a short passing game, and then open it up down the seam and get Thomas on some play action. I mean, I think that's their biggest recipe for success. So, in my opinion, I mean, I'm going to be going with the Saints. I just don't see the Rams going in there and winning this game. I think worst case, it's going to be a push, but I like the Saints to cover. I'm actually leaning under in this game. I think the Saints D is going to show up, and Lattimore is a big X factor. Depending whether he's on Woods or whoever they want to put him on, if he's on Cooks. I think I like the Saints here. The record at home kind of speaks for itself. I'm gonna ride the Saints. Ben, what are your thoughts on the spread?
So I'm on the Rams. I'll probably take it. Plus 145 is what I see on the money line. I think if I go there, maybe if it gets to 3.5, I'd be more, apt to take those points. They could be pertinent with that half point. But we see the game very similar. I think the difference for me is I have more confidence in Goff. I do think he can get it done if it falls to him. But more so, this is the type of game. Not that I look to do this too often, but if your book does offer something like a double result, I think the team that gets up early really could go wire to wire in the spot. Particularly the Rams. I think they need to get up early. As much as I say I think Goff can do it, I do not want him down 4 with the ball late. That's not the success. I want this game. They're in front. They can get Gurley in space. Goff does enough, and they really force the Saints, who I agree, they want to run the ball, into a more one-dimensional where Breeze is actually traditionally, I know it's counterintuitive to a way to say you want Breeze throwing the ball, but they're most dangerous when they're running it and then Breeze is setting up Kirkwood, Benjamin Watson, Ginn down the seams. If they can get them into a more 5 wide, what they're doing. I actually think that plays into the Rams' hands, even though it's still going to be very tough to stop.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you can make them more one-dimensional as a passing team, then they're easier to play against, which does sound counterintuitive, with Breeze and that offense. But
yeah, you got to pick your poison. I mean, I don't think it'll be. I don't really have a feel on the total. I think it comes in certainly lower scoring than we've seen. Both teams want to run the ball. Wouldn't be stunned to see it end in the 20s. Maybe one team creeps into the 30s. But to me, it's Rams got to start fast. Kind of obviously, I'd love the Eagles start, get up 14-0. That would be great. But don't make Goff have to abandon, his running backs too early.
So it sounds like I'm on the Saints and you both are on the Rams. Yeah, and it looks like I'm the only one on the over, so I like that. I like that a lot. I want to talk about the props for a second, Jordan, if you don't mind. Again, there are some inefficiencies Ben and I pointed out last week against James White. This game is a little bit more, a little bit tighter, but one of the ones that stuck out to me was Todd Gurley, 104.5 total yards. I like that. I just think that he's probably another week removed from that injury. I know C.J. Anderson's been hot, but if C.J. Anderson runs cold in the first couple of snaps that he gets, then if Sean McVay seriously is going to keep going to C.J. Anderson over Todd Gurley, then I don't know what to say. I don't think it happens this game. I like the over 104.5 total yards. The other one is I actually also like Kamara over 100 yards. So I'm looking at both running backs here, both stud running backs, and taking the overs.
Yeah, Ben, did you have any props that you had checked out or any thoughts on those?
Gurley's one, I haven't looked too in depth. If I can short C.J. Anderson, I will. I don't know if he'll have his own props because.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 48.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, so I would take the under there. I just don't see a way. That what happened in Dallas is I don't see much carryover. I really don't. I know they want to run the ball, but they were just running downhill. It funneled perfectly to him. I see him more in this game as someone to spell Gurley, give him a blow here and there. Maybe he gets a series. I wouldn't be stunned to see CJ Anderson have a handful of carries for, 20 yards. And that's really
6 carries.
Yeah, all he contributes. At the end of this game, whether they're up or down, I don't see any way where Gurley is not in there carrying the bulk of the load.
Yep.
Yeah, that under CJ Anderson prop was one that I had highlighted.
Yeah,
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, they will not replicate what they did last week. I'm fairly confident in that. And I actually had circled under on Gurley, so I think we're on total opposites on basically that entire game. It sounds like.
So you just, I assume you're pretty confident that the Saints up front can stop that run and force it off, I guess. Yeah. No,
yeah. I'm thinking that they'll try and turn the Rams into that one-dimensional. Let's make Goff beat us. Let's give him, 8 in the box. Is going to be second and third and longs, and he's just going to have to beat us. We've got good corners.
Do you think, though, that opens up? See, the reason why I liked the over on the total yards for Gurley was if they do stack it and we get these quick screens, he breaks one for 40, he breaks one for 30, something like that, he's going to get 15 carries. Now, does he get 15 carries and 50 yards? I think he probably does, and then I think he probably gets over on the 50 receiving. Again, this was just my thought, and if game flow goes correctly, he's going to be in the end of the game either way. So I can see it going either way, but I'm going to stick to my guns on this one.
Yeah, you actually bring up a good point because what I was looking at was rushing yards, not total yards.
So total yards is 100. Rushing is 72.5.
Yeah, so I do see a much more likely avenue for him to get just a lot more screens and some easy yardage on second and long, third and longs. He could get chunk plays really easily. So I probably wouldn't touch total yards or maybe I would go over, kind of go with you guys. But I am going to kind of stick to my guns with the under on the rushing. And just kind of with that script of, like I said, the Saints are going to put 8 in the box. They're really going to force Goff to beat them.
Well, yeah, they limit. The Saints, for what it's worth, they did do a very good job. I know they gave up 35 points, but Gurley, he had 80 total yards and a touchdown in that first game, 6 catches, and it amounted to basically nothing. So, they're going to try to replicate where obviously the Rams are going to try to get him in space. Can you just limit these screens to not, once they get explosive, obviously that's how the Rams really hurt you. Both teams, I think we're kind of saying the same thing. I think both teams really know what they want to do, and it's forced the other team to be, more one-dimensional, limit some of those weapons. It's going to be a chess match of who can really control that from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I think we see the game the same way. It's just a question of who can, dictate their will and kind of take control.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys. So with that, why don't we move into the second game? Pats Chiefs. The line is right now Chiefs -3. That's been pretty steady. The over/under has been on kind of an adventure. It opened up very high, 59-ish in certain spots. There's been talk of this subarctic weather coming in, and that drove the total way down to 55. That has since been bet back up to about 56. So that's been on quite an adventure. The Brady and the Pats just on this insane run, as Jason will probably tell us all about. But this is their 8th consecutive conference championship, which is just kind of hard to fathom.
Ridiculous.
When you say that, just to kind of wrap your mind around it. It's their 13th overall with Brady and Belichick. Also just pure insanity. It's Andy Reid versus Belichick, which some might say is chess versus checkers. It's kind of the old guard with Brady, the new guard with Mahomes. Pretty fascinating matchup on both sides. What are your guys' thoughts? Jason, why don't you kick it off, Mr. Pats fan?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the game at the beginning of the year, what can we take away from that? I don't know. Obviously the Patriots are a different team in Foxborough. We know that. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, the Chiefs, though, had Kareem Hunt. And someone's going to tell me, hey, Jason, Damian Williams has been great. I don't care. He's not Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt had a really good game against the Patriots, if I'm not mistaken, both in the passing game and in the running game. So I don't know that Damian Williams is going to do that. We've played Damian Williams before. And I say we. I'm sorry, I'm a Patriots fan. Patriots have played Damian Williams quite a bit when he was in Miami and wasn't really able to do anything. Obviously, it comes more down to the offensive line. for the Chiefs being just a little bit better. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I'm on the under here. I think that the cold is just going to keep the game a little bit tight. And so we saw Andrew Luck last week, and Ben and I talked about this very briefly about the weather. It kind of just looked like the players were slow in the beginning, and cold weather is going to do that, obviously. So I think that both teams, sure, I think it's going to be a great game. I just can't see it getting to 58. I see a 28-21, which takes us right, under 50. 4 touchdowns, maybe some field goals. I just see this staying under. I see it being a tight game. And I see the Patriots being able to stop Mahomes a couple of times, and also vice versa, the Chiefs being able to stop Brady. So I'm taking the under, and yeah, I'm taking the Patriots money line. I don't know that Mahomes is ready. He's a rookie quarterback for all intents and purposes for me. He's not going to beat Brady and Belichick, not at least for another couple of years.
It's such an interesting game because we do have the article that, from what I've seen, it's going to be cold, but I don't think it's going to be brutal. I think both teams would kind of say, I'll take it. 20 degrees at night in January is not the worst. So we'll have to see about that. Spencer Ware looks like he's going to play. Both of them are not going to replicate Kareem Hunt. You're absolutely right. But I will say, it's funny, the Steelers obviously are not involved, but the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Patriots, they all play each other, kind of have their number. And the Chiefs, the way they play usually does cause the Patriots trouble on defense just because they can stretch them vertically. Tyreek Hill, we saw in the first game, can get over the top. And obviously when the Steelers are involved, they play that stupid zone defense, and that's what Brady picks apart every single time. So like most games, I think this comes down to, can Chris Jones, can they get pressure? Can Dee Ford cause Brady some problems with only rushing forward? Because when you blitz him, it's just too hard. He gets the ball out too quickly. James White, Edelman, now that Gronk, you got to give Gronk credit. He was a non-factor. And then you look, and he was blocking like there was no tomorrow. He was crucial in that game. Didn't help you for DFS purposes, but obviously still serving a purpose there. To me, honestly, Arrowhead is one of the places similar to the Superdome where it's just different. The Chiefs do play really well there. Patriots, not in the confines of Foxborough. I'm not saying that Mahomes has a huge game because I don't think he does. Also think both teams try to control the tempo, which limits this score. I do think that the Chiefs find a way to win at home. Nothing stands out in terms of plays. Travis Kelce, I think, is the guy the Patriots are going to want to take away. And that's going to open it up for, can they get Hill over the top? Can Ware and Williams just do enough? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think you make a couple of good points there. Just to kind of wrap it up, the Chiefs played the Patriots, as we mentioned. They lost 43-40, back in week 6, just an epic shootout.
Another good game, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to get replicated this week or not. One interesting stat with the weather, and it has been overblown. I don't think anybody is counting on these crazy temperatures. But even so, the over is actually 114 and 80 in games played in temperatures colder than 30 degrees. And that goes back to 2003.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting stat. I'm a little bit leaning towards the over. I don't have a strong take on the total. I think for the side, I am going to go with the Chiefs at home. I think what they can do is so multidimensional, and I see them giving problems to the Patriots, that the Patriots really just haven't had an answer to for most of the season. If you go back to their first meeting, and like Ben said, like traditionally the Chiefs, for some reason, have always kind of had the Patriots number over these last, 4 or 5 years as the Patriots have dominated. Even with Alex Smith as quarterback, there was that one famous game where everyone said, the Pats were done, Brady was done, and the Chiefs.
And then what happened? And then in the playoffs, we blew them out. Listen, they're just a different team. We're a different team in the playoffs as good teams are, as dynasty teams are. They step it up a notch. So, I understand the want to go to the Chiefs, but do we really think that Damian Williams can match Kareem Hunt's production? Because he's going to need to if they're going to win.
From my vantage point, I think the combination of him and Ware will do enough. And I think the difference right there, when I think of the Patriots, and I didn't even realize this, Brady, as good as he has done nothing on the road in the playoffs. Most of that's because they always secure home field and they don't have to. But at the same time, this we're gonna be tested. If they go into Arrowhead, that would add just another bullet point to the impressive run, because all those teams, almost all of them, they got in Foxborough. I remember when they had to go to Mile High, and they played hard and they lost.
Yep.
This is a
That was a
tough
good game,
spot,
yeah.
I think, for going into Arrowhead at night. Obviously, the crowd will be ready, so we'll see. I do think that bolsters, even for running backs. Not that it correlates perfectly, but Damian Williams and Ware are going to benefit, just like the entire Chiefs team, from being at home in this one.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm coming from. The Pats on the road traditionally have not been that great in the playoffs, and like you said, it's such a limited sample size because they're always at home and they always have the 1 seed. And this is kind of a unique scenario here. Mahomes being, essentially a rookie quarterback, it's his second year, but his first year as a starter, that gives me some pause, but, he is just a different animal. And I have a lot of confidence in him against the Patriots defense. I think they're going to want to do a lot of quick routes, a lot of screens, a lot of play action, of course, that they need to get the run game going and they need to get off to a quick start. If they do get in the hole, sure, it could turn into a shootout pretty quickly, but, these games tend to bog down a little bit more. And, I'm expecting a little bit low scoring. I know I said maybe I'd lean over. Now that I think about it, I don't love either side. So as far as the total goes, but I do see the Chiefs coming out ahead. I think it's kind of their year. They're kind of a team of destiny at this point. And just at home, they're just so much tougher than they are on the road. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to find a way to squeak out a W here. And I don't think it's going to end the Brady Belichick, era regime, but I think they have a really strong chance to win, and I'm going to be betting them as the favorites.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, they're tough games. I don't think anyone has I would be stunned, if they're blowouts. To be honest, the totals, they didn't strike me as overly egregious on any side. So it's interesting that both teams they both matched up. They were both shootouts the first time. I think some bias will come into that. I don't see that happening in either of these games. Playoffs are a different animal, but it's going to be 2 good ones on Sunday. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. One thing we didn't mention was Eric Berry. There's some chance that he may play. We're not quite sure. That may have an impact on the game. He's obviously a high impact safety who can make a big difference for the Chiefs. Their defense gets a lot of flack, but they do play better at home. I don't think they're going to stop the Patriots by any means, but I do think they can be a little bit stouter than, people give them credit for. And just look at last week. I mean, the Colts came in as kind of a high-powered, high-momentum offense, and they were just entirely shut down. I mean, that offense didn't do anything. And, the crowd, the weather, they kind of all just kind of, escalates. And the Chiefs just play so much better at home. And, I'm hoping that Andy Reid doesn't get in the way and they can pull it out.
We'll see. Yeah. So any final thoughts for you fellas on? I know it's obviously just 2 games, but they are big ones. A lot of layers to these 2.
No, I think we pretty much hashed it out on my side.
Yeah, just looking forward to the games. Obviously we'll look ahead, maybe next week to some Super Bowl props and some Super Bowl lines, obviously. But a fascinating weekend for sure. The best 4 teams, basically all we can ask for. 2 high totals, should be 2 fun games. Why don't we jump quickly into some college basketball? Because I know both of you guys are pretty sharp in college basketball, and I know Jason had a pretty good week last week and wanted to tell us about it. So what you want to go through just real quickly, some of those games that you guys talked about and what you thought, of the results and kind of your edge in those games.
Yeah, so we talked about Indiana and Maryland, Ben and I, for quite a bit, and we just highlighted that Indiana had been playing pretty well, probably played a little bit of a tougher schedule than Maryland, and just felt the line at 6.5 was just a little bit too much. So we didn't bet Indiana to win. We said that they'd be able to keep it within a couple of points, and sure enough, they did. And we also talked about how both teams were not playing good defense, and that the over was a good one as well, and that hit pretty easily by about 9 points. And then Ben talked about Northern Kentucky as a team that he likes to bet. And I believe the line was 1.5, Ben, if I'm not mistaken.
It was bouncing around. It was a little inflated from that. Depending on, and this is the importance of book shopping and whatnot, depending on where you got your line, you may have pushed, you may have lost, you may have won by 0.5 point. It fell right on 4. But they're just a team at home. They play in the Horizon Conference. I like to take them there. They played last night, played well, beat another ugly Cleveland State team. So some of these smaller schools, now that we're in conference play, you can pick them off, get some good spots. They're one of those teams that I like to target.
Yeah, and one of those kind of mid-majors, I'll call them, this year that is on the docket for this week that I'm looking at. And the reason why I'm taking, normally I don't like to lay 16 points, but I'm taking Buffalo, laying 16 against Eastern Michigan. I think Buffalo's got to keep dominating to keep improving their standings with the the NCAA. And it's almost like we saw kind of in college football where, teams will run up the score just to impress the committee a little bit more. And I think we're going to see Eastern Michigan just kind of fall off a cliff and Buffalo be able to win by 20 plus. Ben, you seeing anything different than me? Do you like that as well, or is 16 too much for you?
So this is actually a game that, Fridays are tough. We have limited things, so we pick some games. I actually bet this game.
Okay.
I locked in this morning. I am against you, though. I bet Eastern Michigan plus 16.
Okay.
Interesting team. So they played Duke early. They've played a couple big boys. They've got slaughtered. I think that will be pertinent here. They've played Buffalo already at home. They lost by 16. The thing that I really noticed, though, is according to Ken Palm, which obviously a ton of great stats, Eastern Michigan 351st in the country in tempo. They want to slow the pace. They play very methodical. When they're down, they get stretched and they're forced to play catch up. So like similar to the football games that we were talking about, can they get off to a decent start? Not that they have to be winning, but can they keep it in contact where they can play at their tempo? I know they're going to Buffalo tonight. It's not the ideal situation, but at the same time, they have seen this team and they're playing better. They just won at Ball State, who, as Jason knows, I do like Ball State. I think they're a quality team. Eastern Michigan is playing better. Certainly would be stunned if they went in there and won this game. But at the same time, I'll take 16. That's a big number, especially if they can keep this game in the 60s, which I think they can.
Yeah, I think it'll be definitely an interesting one to watch, especially Buffalo coming down the stretch, too, if they can continue this run and get a good seed. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So the other one that I liked, Maryland going to Ohio State. So I took the other side on Maryland last week, but I'm actually going to take the exact same reason I took Indiana. I think Maryland's playing very good. I know they got to go into Ohio State, but this would be a pretty marquee win for their tournament bid. Obviously, they're a top 25 team, so they're probably well inside the bubble line. But Maryland's playing good and showing. I'm going to buy 3 points, so my line's not going to be as good. I'm going to get it to 5. You guys know, or if you've watched the show a couple of times, I like to buy that 3 points, and it's worked out for me recently. So I'm going to do that. And then last one quickly is I'm going to take the 10.5 Xavier against Villanova. Seems like a large line for a Big East team, especially Villanova playing so bad. So, Ben, I'll let you take the other sides of those or join me.
So I will talk about Xavier, and then I'll pass it to Jordan if he has any comments on these games. That is a big game tonight. They're going to Villanova, who hit after some early bumps. Villanova's back to playing not like the champs. I don't want to say they're that good, but they are a very solid team. I do want to point out, though, that Quentin Gooden, who's one of the 3 good Xavier guards, he's missed the last 2 games. He's coming back tonight, it looks like. Keep an eye on that status. They need him if they're going to go into the into Nova and Philly and compete. I'm with you, though. 10.5 is a good number. This is going to be a competitive game. Another one. Do I think they can win the game? That's a tough task. Villanova's a damn good team. But if they can get their 3rd guard back, good backcourt for Xavier, they're playing a little better. I think they keep it within less than double digits. So you want to give me 10.5 there. I'll join the Musketeer party for sure.
Jordan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Xavier, I do like that side. I don't really have a strong opinion on the Eastern Michigan game, especially with that Ken Palm stat. It sounds like a team that would be ripe to cover a big number if they play that slowly. But I don't really have a strong opinion on either one of those games. I am a Big Ten guy, so the Maryland-Ohio State game is interesting to me. I don't know. I haven't delved real deep into college basketball yet, to be honest, this season. I NFL and NBA essentially takes up all my time. So I don't want to give any takes, on one side or the other. But what I will say is that if I ever were to open my own sports book, I would definitely want customers who want to buy multiple points on a game.
Paying that extra juice.
Yeah, paying me all that extra juice for those extra points. I think that'd be a good business model for us. Maybe we can join forces.
Yeah, it's worked out. I don't know why. Normally it doesn't. It's not something I recommend, but in college basketball, it seems to work. And now I know when I buy those 3 points, I'm getting it to like minus 180 sometimes. And I know you got to win, obviously, too, to be profitable if you're going to lose your third. So it's just worked out. It's been 4-0 on my last 4. So I guess I'm just going to keep this trend until the book says too bad or I just lose on one of them.
I can't argue with that kind of run. So maybe you know something that we don't.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big advocate of, especially maybe across the key number, but certainly not 3. I will say Big Ten. I know you just said you're a Big Ten guy. It is stacked. I'm not going to rehash. As many people know, Nebraska let me down last night.
Yeah,
they had played a big one and lost in almost a year at home. Michigan State went in there and they just beat them. They just played better. 32% from the field for Nebraska. You just can't shoot like that. Lost by 6. They played hard. I like that team. It was tough to be mad. It's a make and miss league at the end of the day. You got to make your shots. They did what they needed to. They battled on the boards. They just could not make the shots when, their best 2 players were 9 of 34. You're not going to beat a quality team like Michigan State. Just to segue back, Maryland, kind of the same thing. I think they're going to have to play well tonight to beat Ohio State. Going on the road in the Big Ten it's a tough ask. They have plenty of talent. There's no doubt. Cowan, Fernando, these guys can play. It's just about execution because you eliminate that bottom couple. Rutgers, Illinois is not great. Honestly, the rest of the Big Ten, they can beat each other on any given night.
Yeah, thank you for that quick shot on Illinois not being great as my alma mater.
They rolled Minnesota the other night. I don't know if you saw that. It's tough, but you know what? You got a good coach. I like that guy a lot. He's old Stephen F. Austin coach. He'll have them back in humming soon enough.
Yeah, I do like him, and it's been a rough decade here. So going back to
Duran
or essentially 05, but the Big Ten is loaded and always fun to watch, and those teams just beat up each other every night. So we'll have a lot more to talk about for sure going forward, talking about the Big Ten and college hoops, certainly as we get into February and then March, with the conference tournaments and then the tournaments. Let's talk about golf real quick, since I have our 2 golf experts here, for us to give us all their knowledge. So we got some round 2 matchups that have appeared this morning. Jason, you want to go ahead and run us through kind of what you're seeing and where you're seeing some potential opportunities?
Yeah, so not a ton left, but there are still 3 good ones there because we've been teeing off for just about an hour now. 11:30 was the first tee time. Phil Mickelson shot 12 under yesterday and is again 2 under through 3 holes today, just to give a quick leaderboard update. But a couple of round 2 matchups, which I do like to look at these lines. For some reason, the books, they'll put up the guys, like Ches Reavie and John Rahm are playing against each other, right? But what I've liked to do is I've liked to get rid of the juice, which, is different than the other one. So John Rahm is minus 190. I'll go to the half stroke that he beats him by more than a half a stroke for the minus 155. I'll take Cantlay against Kazir for minus 1.5 even. And then I'll take Bo Hustler against Jamie Lovemark straight up. I just want to always bet the better golfer because 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to win. Sure, is Ches Reavie going to beat Rahm maybe 1 out of 10 times? Maybe 2. But those are the bets that I'm looking at. Rahm beat him yesterday by 1 and didn't even play that good. And Cantlay just trounced Pat Kazir and also didn't play well. So I like those 2 bets for today. And you got about 10 minutes if you're watching live. You got about 10 minutes to get the Rahm bet in.
Get to those windows. This is such a tough tournament. I was just going to mention they don't have strokes gain data on 2 of the 3 courses. That makes it difficult. Obviously, guys who played the stadium course, which is the hardest of the 3, you can glean some insight into how they actually played. Because I base a lot of my matchups on, okay, this guy, he was 2 under, but he gained 6 strokes putting. I'm going to look for some regression there. You can't really see that if they played La Quinta or, Nicholas course. I will say, Rahm obviously certainly a better golfer than Ches, paying a little juice for sure, but you can mitigate that somewhat, as you mentioned, if you do lay a half a stroke. So if they split, if they tie, you're going to lose that bet. But, if you think he goes out and really, really lays it to him, obviously you want to lay a couple holes and maybe you can get to the plus side of a bet.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, guys. It sounds like we only got a few more minutes before a lot of these guys are teeing off today. So if you do need to run to the window, please go do it. Any other kind of final thoughts wrapping up the golf for this weekend? Any thoughts as to who might pull this out? Is Phil gonna
Yeah, I mean, Phil's got a 6-stroke lead. He played La Quinta yesterday, so we haven't seen Cantlay go there yet. My guy. So, and Cantlay shot 5 under yesterday with a couple of eagles. I just looked at the live lines, and obviously Phil is the overwhelming favorite, almost at like 1.5 to 1 right now, which is making all the lines a little longer. So I'd keep an eye. If Phil makes a bogey out there in the next couple of holes, and maybe stops that momentum a little bit, maybe you could start to jump or look to jump on Cantlay at 20 to 1. Adam Hadwin is like 9 to 1. So there are some lines, but I would probably just focus on Cantlay at 20 to 1 because he hasn't even teed off yet, and there's only 9 back and still has to play La Quinta. So I think Cantlay is probably the best value on odds to win, in my opinion, at this point.
It's tricky because some of the chasers, Curtis Luck and Adam Long, it's hard to really back those type of guys. Came out of nowhere, in my opinion. So you definitely want to look to, if you're going to take a stand against Phil, somebody who at least has a chance to. I hope Ryan Blom wins. Don't think that's going to be happening, but Hadwin, Cantlay, you mentioned these guys are obviously, they have some firepower. It is nice if they haven't played the easiest course yet. That's something to check out. If you see someone up there and they still have the stadium course left, you might want to, pump the brakes a little because that's going to be a much tougher sell. And then obviously Sunday they all go there, and that's when it can really shake up.
Yeah, one other guy that I just want to mention because we actually talked about him on Wednesday, Ben, Jordan, is Jonathan Vegas. He shot 5 under at the stadium course yesterday, second best round. He's sitting at 30 to 1. So it's not bad because he has won on the PGA Tour. So it's a little easier to back him over a guy like Curtis Luck that Ben just brought up. So Jonathan Vegas, Abraham Answer, and Patrick Cantlay, 23, 23, and 30 to 1. I'd take a look at those.
Fair enough.
Sounds good to me. I'm a Cantlay guy too. I know, Jason, you're a huge fan, so
yeah, absolutely.
I might sprinkle a little bit on him to catch Phil and take it down.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to tell you not to do that. I bet against Phil all the time, though, so that's probably a standard for me.
Although, as a lefty golfer myself, I feel like maybe I should have a little more
I'm
support
also
for my man. But
lefty golfer.
2 lefties, what?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I'm an awful golfer. My one redeeming golf quality is I can play the same with either hand. So I can golf lefty and righty. No
wow.
That's interesting.
Not good really with either hand, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, it sounds like you're perfecting the hustle with that move.
Yeah, that's really how I need to do it. Just mid round, just do the kind of borrow your club. Let me get that. Start switching righty.
I like it. Great. All right, boys. Well, I appreciate you guys coming along on my maiden voyage here. It was a good time. And I'm looking forward to this weekend, and then we'll touch base next week, see who was smart, see who's not smart, and we'll do a recap from there. And any closing thoughts? Otherwise, we'll send it out.
Not for me.
Nope. Good luck, everyone. As always, stay tuned. Just on the betting side, real quick plug for me. Have some articles coming up. My NFL article published this morning. I'll drop it in our premium Slack chat. You can check that out. Breaks down the games, DFS, and betting. Recaps a lot what we talked about here. So that'll be coming soon enough.
Yeah, we'll check that out and make sure, subscribers check out our premium Slack chat. We now have a sports betting channel, which will be in talking about the games, breaking down, player props, etc. Also, if you could like this video, hammer the button, whatever you need to do, help us out. We really appreciate it. And good luck, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Good show, guys.